Hi guys, you're back with Litre Evo X. Today is the 29th of May 2022, and yesterday I went out to Willowbank Raceway to have another go at the quarter mile. Now, about a year ago, I ran my personal best in this car, an Evo X with the SST transmission, dual clutch transmission. And that time was 11.63 at 118 miles per hour. So it was a cool night, but as per usual, which seems to be the case always at Willowbank Raceway, there was lots of delays and issues with people breaking down, oil downs, etc, etc. So you probably will have seen, if you've been following my videos, that I'd been to the track 2 or 3 times since then. And that was when I installed the Bulletproof Racing double pumper setup. So basically that gave me some issues, and I continued to have fuel cut, which was the whole point of installing that. So that then got removed, and I had a Raceworks 2.8 litre surge tank installed, and that actually fixed issues that I had with fuel cut. On the last occasion that I went to the track, I actually had an issue with my launch control though, and you will have seen an issue that a video that I uploaded with the brake switch, which I've since rectified. So what's happened since then is I've done 3 major upgrades or changes, I guess you could say, that I've tried to improve the car. Now, the first is that since that time, flashes for SST gearboxes have become a lot better. So you may have heard of the SST TCU 9000 SST flash. Basically, it allows you to do a number of things. So I consulted with Alan from AK Racing, and the first thing that we can talk about is the increase in spark cut launch control. Now, previously it was not possible to use the factory ECU and have spark cut launch control over 4,500 RPM. And in my videos you will have seen previously that when I used that at the track, the car would dip back to 3,500 and then start taking off. When I did a whole lot of testing with Alan on my GT Pump 712, okay, so that's a small turbo, 1 step up from factory. It uses the OEM hot side, so the turbine housing and turbine wheel, but it has the same compressor inlet and outlet, so you can use stock intercooler piping, no issues. You don't need to have a larger coupler to reduce from a larger compressor to a smaller top intercooler pipe or an intake pipe. So it's all stock apart from the compressor wheel. So the compressor wheel is a larger wheel, and a lot of people say who've got older Evos that the 712 performs like a Force Performance green, an FP green. And I would agree with that. So it's the sort of car, the sort of turbo that you could probably say is similar to an old style TDO 5H20G. It's not exactly the same, but if you're old school and you're thinking about comparative turbos, particularly if you're in America, where this turbo is not, or as far as I know, not even used at all. So it's a turbo that sort of crams a lot of air, but still retains a small turbine housing. And so for that reason, it's got spool, which is very similar to stock, but not as good as stock. But it does flow a lot better in the mid-range. But of course, it sacrifices in the top end because of that stock hot side. So that's exactly what I wanted out of a turbo setup for the car. I wanted to have good boost down low when I'm driving on the street, particularly as a family guy. I've got a young child, wife. I didn't want to be having this turbo that was just going to be off boost and just not fun to drive. So I've been able to go back to the track and use that turbo, same setup, E85, 1200cc injectors, and be able to launch better with the TCU 9000 upgrade. So basically, as I said, 5500 RPM, the turbo builds 7.5 pounds of boost, whereas previously I was only building 4.5 or 5 PSI of boost. So a little bit of an increase there, but not a lot. But the increase in revs though allows me to basically not bog off the line, on the proviso that I do actually sit there and build boost. Now in the video that you'll see tonight, unfortunately, just sort of the, what would you call it? The mental and physical challenge of waiting for almost 3 hours to have a run, and to actually have 3 issues with people's cars in a line just before me, just before I go, meant that I had to have fatigue with just sitting there trying to get the clutches at temp, etc, etc. So if you've actually had to compete in drag racing before, or if you've watched my videos and just get it of what's actually happening, you'll know that that is a world of difference in comparison to just, racing on the street. So the 3 upgrades that I've done, first one was that TCU upgrade. The second one I did is, because that increase in revs and the spark cut launch control, I was super worried about how the diff and the drive shafts in the rear were going to handle that power. So I did research, there's lots of research that's out there. You just have to know where to look for it. So the first thing I did was I had a look at what I would consider to be the best guy in the business, which would be Miles from English Racing. There's a couple of videos that he did with that racing channel. And in the first video he ever did, where they're reviewing his car, which shows him at the track, etc., he talked at end about how the car is far too heavy and how he basically had a whole lot of failures because he hadn't removed enough weight. So if you're going to start looking at quarter mile racing and getting a good time in these cars, then it's fair enough if you don't want to remove the weight and you just want to know how it runs as it is, so every day. So that means you don't go and remove the interior, etc, etc. But that's not for everyone though. And so I'm one of those guys that don't fit into that box. So because I'm running a small turbo, the odds are against me in terms of high speed performance. And the only way that I can obviously make up for that without actually losing any, without gaining lag on the street, is to remove parts. Now, this is a kind of a wishy-washy subject for people, because you can do lots of things to weight save. So you can put titanium exhaust system, lithium battery, lightweight wheels. You can remove parts from the car. You can even go further, like what I've done. So you can go wingless, you can put a carbon boot, you can dry ice all the padded interior as well as the hard stuff, which we will see in all of my old videos. Yeah, so you can do all of that stuff. You can change to 2-piece rotors, which are lighter than the single piece if that's what you've got on your car, etc, etc. So there's really no equal playing field in terms of what's a fair advantage when you do weight saving or not. And when you go to run a quarter mile time on any sort of online register that talks about times, there is no category for weight saving. So basically, most people generally just talk about how quickly they've run as an official time at a dragway. So basically the issue I had with the car was, what am I going to do when I go to launch it at a higher RPM? 5500 RPM is certainly getting up there, And when you actually sit there on launch control and you see the revs at that, it actually starts to worry you. So the problem I was worrying about is the diff going to grenade on me because the car's too heavy? So I removed the weight from the car. And then the second thing was how my drive shaft's going to handle it. Now, I can't really do anything to physically prevent that, apart from if you went and bought some drive shaft shop carbon fiber ones, which are lightweight, to help sort of bring down rotational mass. But what you can do is you can play around with the rear suspension if you've got the right sort of coilovers. So I would say that if I was running a conventional coilover, which meant that you adjust ride height and you have no means of adjusting rebound, then that may be a bit of a flaky sort of exercise to take if you're launching over 5,500 RPM. What I did in my case is the teen monoshock coilovers. So my coilovers, there's a video about it again in my history. They're an inverted coilover, so they're upside down, and they have the dampener valve at the top like you'd normally adjust. But the difference with these ones is that it's got independent ride height adjustment, which is separate to rebound. So what that means is that I can, on the rear in particular, it comes with a set of helper springs. So essentially you have a spring that's probably about yay tall, and then you've got the normal spring, which is probably, your hands width, sort of thing like that. And when I had this installed, the guys at AK, which was perfectly fine, they installed it with the helper spring almost compressed. So it enabled me to drive at a reasonable ride height, so that I'm not sort of slammed to the ground. That's the whole point. So they sell that as a kit with the helper spring, so that if you have if your primary purpose for the car, even though it's more of a track-oriented coilover, if your primary purpose is to drive on the street, then you can get by. So what I did to try and ease any issues with the rear, the diff, etc., was to increase that helper spring so that it wouldn't try and push back so fast and give any shock to the rear drive line. I also put the rear suspension to full soft, whereas I normally, in all my previous videos, I'd either had it on full hard or medium. So basically, I didn't want the rear to squat down so much previously when I was at lower RPMs, but now that I'm at higher RPMs, I actually want the car to squat down a bit and then come back up slowly as well. So yeah, when I ran at the track last night, I have some photos that the photographer for the track took. And so you'll see here how much the rear of the car squatted in comparison to the front. But yeah, I managed to not damage it. It launched pretty good. The only problem was that I didn't sit on that spark cut long enough. I literally got there. As soon as it reached the spark cut range, I started racing. And that was a driver error, which unfortunately resulted in a 1.8 60 foot, which is just the same as what I've always run. On my testing on the street, I've been able to make it launch at 5,500 RPM, and it's literally slingshots away without any sort of dip in revs at all. So much to the point that I mentioned to Alan that I was actually feeling slightly nauseous from when it occurred, because the G-forces with it were vastly different to what I've ever experienced previously. All right, so the third thing I did, and I'll just put the light on here, is I actually installed a aluminium cover to the SST oil cooler. Now, by doing that, what I have actually found during this winter period is that the SST comes up to temp even quicker than what it already does with the heated sump, but also that it actually operates at a higher temperature. Now, naturally, you would expect that would happen because there's no flow to the cooler. And what I found is that instead of sort of being at about 70 to 74 degrees driving, it would actually operate in the 80 to 90 degree range. Now, that's particularly helpful if you're sitting for hours at a track in the staging lane, because the core SST cooler temperature is higher. And it also means that if you do a run, then it stays hotter for longer. So yeah, I've been actually been having great results with that cover on the cooler, and I'm definitely going to be running it every cold season from here on in. Okay, so that's the 3 things that I've done in the last year, or particularly since I had the surge tank installed by AK Racing. The other thing I did, but it's much of a muchness, I replaced the tyres with the same ones. So the old Salem R01 semi-slicks, 265 35 18s all around, had gone hard because I'd actually gone and done 2 what are they called, skid pan days at Mount Cotton, and they put kerosene in the water, and that actually hardens up tyres. And I found that when I ordered my new tyres, you'd feel it was so soft in comparison. So yeah, much grippier feeling in the tyres now, and much quieter as I haven't gone hard over a period of time, and really enjoying this new set of tyres, and such like an awesome value for money aspect. Once again, guys, I'd like to thank you for watching and just sort of subscribing and following me. I don't have a huge following like other people do, but I hope that you find that my videos are informative, and it helps someone out some way, somewhere in the world. Thanks very much, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. So I got here at about just after 4, I think it was. Went to a new scrutineering process, which was halfway down the track. Yeah, a little bit different. Got into the staging lanes, then had to wait for, as you can see, to 7 PM. So this is why quarter mile racing is a lot harder to run a time at. And if you look at my history of videos, you'll see that I've had this issue time and time again. And I would say that if you can, try and contact the track or someone that does the buyout, so that you can have, an hour or maybe more of unique track time. Buy into it, because it's simply just, yeah. At this time of year, there's lots of breakages. There's all sorts of cars here. There's a little guy like me, and then there's all sorts of, full-on race cars for the winter nationals. So it looks like I'm going to be here for probably another, let's have a guess. What do you reckon? It's 7:10 in the top right corner here, and what would you like to take a punt at? 7:30? Let's see how we go. So as you can see, I've got coolant, SST, and yeah, there's everything else. Alright guys, so the time is 7:30 and we're still going. I've turned the car on because it's dropping temperature and I need to be the first guy to run. So I'm the only one literally running their engine because of that. Had the fellow who takes the photos here water down the complete entrance to the strip. So nice job. So here we go, and how long we have to wait now. Alright guys, so I've just had my first run, and as you can see, the car that was next to me dropped a whole lot of smoke. So they stopped running again. So I'm not going to line up again. That was quite a long time to have one run, but here is the slip. So 876 right lane was me, 11.585, 120.07. Just over a year since I've come back to have this run, and I consider this to be a really good achievement. It's everything that I've wanted to achieve for the car. Run 11.5. I've had the car now for 4 years, and so I'm now going to focus on the circuit.